In one sense, this is a reassuring, even heartening finding. It highlights the agency at the very heart of our humanity. You're talking about free will there, people choosing their family size. But if we permit the non-material realm of life to figure into our inquiry, we may conclude that proposals to revive the American birth rate through subsidies vastly underestimate the challenge. The challenge may ultimately prove to be civilizational in nature, close quote. Okay, so I look at, first of all, that hits like a 2x4. Civilizational in nature. And on the one hand, I think to myself, wait a minute, aren't we all supposed to be delighted that in this modern world, women are in a position to participate in the workforce, they're in a position to choose more carefully, more explicitly, more intentionally the number of children they'd like to have. Aren't we supposed to believe that that's a wonderful thing and that releasing that many women to the workforce should increase the dynamism and growth of our economy, all that. Good, 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 good. On the other hand, I think back to what little I remember about American demographic history, and we got low birth rates during the Depression because everybody was poor.
Right.
And they were discouraged. And they didn't want to bring children into that world. And then we got low birth rates during the Second World War because life was frightening and the men were away risking their lives. And then we get Harry Truman and Dwight David Eisenhower. And my own reading of that history is that it's complicated. Truman was probably a much better president than he's generally granted. But set all that aside, what happens is, whether you agree with this or that policy, whether you think Ike should have pushed back harder against the New Deal, both of those presidents said with regard to domestic policy at least, let's just leave it alone. Let's give people a settled set of rules, a settled America, so they can have families. And they did. And you and I are both baby boomers. We are both products.
Absolutely.
And we think to ourselves, this is an achievement of American history, that we struggle through the Depression and we win the Second World War, and then we achieve enough stability and prosperity to permit people to do what they most want to do, and that is to have children. And that is good. It is a triumphant moment in American history. So what's going on here? Why should it be? May I put it one more way? I'll put it a different way. You have 4 kids. I've got you by 1. Shouldn't don't those of us who've had children feel that having children was the biggest thing that we'd ever done in our lives, the best thing that we've ever done in our lives? Why aren't children a luxury good? Why don't we have more of them as we become a richer society instead of fewer? All right, these are the bundles of questions,
sure.
Nick, in my head. When I read that, we've got a civilizational challenge. Our civilization no longer likes life. Why?
So the demographers have all of these really neat little tools. And if you give them assumptions, they can calculate what trajectories are going to look like in the future. But demographers cannot tell you what those assumptions should be. They cannot actually put the parameters into the black box. And for that, I think economics is fine so far as it goes, but what you really need, instead of a Nobel laureate in economics, is a Nobel laureate in literature. Because you're talking about zeitgeist, you're talking about the human heart, you're talking about all of the things that bring meaning to humanity and fears of humanity in ways that economists aren't so good at calculating, or much less demographers. As parents, we know how wonderful children are and what a blessing it is to be a parent. But one thing that I will say about children is, for all of their boundless benefits, they're not convenient. And we have we have moved increasingly into a world, and this is just one take on a much more complicated set of questions that you've asked, but we've moved into a world in which convenience is prized, and in which autonomy, personal autonomy, is cherished, and in which constraints on personal autonomy are increasingly viewed as onerous. You don't have to be Leo Tolstoy to see what that means about desire for children. Add to that the big change in lived experience, in the lived reality for young people today as compared to those, we can all talk, give grandpa's war stories about what life was like back in the 1980s. But people who are thinking about having children today do not live in Reagan's America. They live in a place that's got this new misery shaping it so much.
You smart, you loyal, you're grateful. I appreciate that.